welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's jump right in because we've got a massive story today. We're unpacking a high-stakes corporate clash between two absolute titans of the tech world. We are looking at the unprecedented, multi-billion-dollar legal battle between Apple and OpenAI. Believe me, if you want to understand the future of artificial intelligence and consumer hardware, you absolutely need to understand what's going down in this lawsuit.
So, you really gotta wonder, how did the biggest tech partnership of 2024 turn into a massive espionage lawsuit? I mean, it was just recently that these two companies were popping champagne over a groundbreaking alliance to put ChatGPT directly into Apple devices. It was the talk of the entire industry. But man, that alliance has soured incredibly fast. Today, we're examining the explosive allegations that OpenAI essentially orchestrated a coordinated campaign to steal Apple's most closely guarded hardware secrets.
Here's a quick roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the bombshell lawsuit. Then, we'll trace how they went from partners to rivals. Next up, we'll dive into the hardware heist allegations. And finally, we'll look at the billion-dollar stakes.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the bombshell lawsuit.
Picture this. July 2026. The simmering tension between these two giants finally boils over, and Apple officially files a lawsuit in federal court in San Jose, California. So what are they actually after? Well, they're seeking major financial damages and a strict legal injunction. Apple is officially accusing OpenAI of orchestrating an aggressive, highly targeted effort to poach its employees and extract confidential information. And the really crucial point here is the why. According to the lawsuit, OpenAI is doing all of this to build its very own consumer hardware device to directly compete in the physical tech space. We are looking at two totally opposing realities on this legal battlefield. Apple's massive 41-page complaint is just blunt. It says OpenAI has been stealing Apple's trade secrets and confidential information, and they allege this is happening at literally every level of OpenAI's technical staff. On the flip side, OpenAI issued a super swift denial to AFP, stating, "We have no interest in other companies' trade secrets." They maintain that they're solely focused on building innovative tech that empowers people. So yeah, two completely different narratives that the court is going to have to somehow untangle. Moving on to Section 2, from partners to rivals. To really understand how we got to this point, we need to trace the recent timeline, because it's kind of crazy how fast this fell apart. It starts on a huge high note in 2024 with that massive partnership for ChatGPT integration. But then look at the rapid deterioration. In 2025, OpenAI flexes its financial muscles and drops $6.5 billion to acquire a company called IO Products, which was a massive signal that they were pivoting to hardware. Then things get super tense. A Bloomberg report in May of 2026 revealed that OpenAI was actually the first one to consider legal action against Apple, allegedly because Apple failed to adequately promote the ChatGPT integration. Just 2 months later, in July 2026, Apple flips the script entirely and hits OpenAI with this massive espionage lawsuit. That 2025 acquisition is the pivotal piece of this puzzle. Let's quickly define IO Products. It's a hardware subsidiary co-founded by none other than legendary former Apple design chief Johnny Ive, alongside another executive, Tang Tan. When OpenAI spent $6.5 billion on this company, they didn't just buy a startup. They essentially bought pure Apple design DNA. They brought highly experienced former Apple executives directly in-house to lead their brand new hardware division. Which brings us to Section 3, the hardware heist allegations. We really need to break down exactly how Apple claims this massive intellectual property theft actually occurred behind closed doors. 400. Let that number sink in for a second. According to the complaint filed in California, roughly 400 current OpenAI employees are former Apple staffers. This isn't just a few people jumping ship. This is a massive, highly targeted migration of talent from Cupertino straight over to OpenAI. Apple claims that it's through this massive pipeline of former employees that the extraction of trade secrets was allegedly orchestrated. Let's get into the gritty mechanics of the alleged heist, because it almost reads like a spy novel. Apple suit specifically names OpenAI's chief hardware officer, Tang Tan. Now, Tan is deeply, deeply familiar with Apple's inner workings. He spent 24 years there, serving as vice president of product design for both the iPhone and the Apple Watch. The suit also names an engineer, Cheng Liu. Apple alleges that Tan actually used confidential Apple project code names during job interviews to probe candidates about unreleased tech. Actually, it gets wilder. Tan allegedly instructed Apple employees to bring physical components, we're talking unreleased batteries and circuit boards, to their OpenAI interviews for unauthorized show and tell sessions. And Apple, well, they're absolutely not mincing words here. Their legal complaint states, and I quote, OpenAI's nascent hardware business now rests on the shakiest of foundations, rotten to its core by its illegal reliance on misappropriated trade secrets. I mean, wow, that is incredibly powerful, aggressive language for a corporate lawsuit, right? It perfectly captures just how fiercely Apple is moving to protect its unreleased hardware innovations.
But here's the part that should really raise some eyebrows. Apple describes these specific instances of alleged theft as merely the tip of the iceberg. They claim they were forced to file this very public lawsuit out of absolute necessity, simply because OpenAI completely ignored their concerns when Apple raised them privately back in February. Because Apple has limited visibility into what's actually happening behind OpenAI's closed doors, they're warning the court that the full scope of the espionage could be vastly larger than what they've uncovered so far.
Let's wrap things up with Section 4, the billion-dollar stakes. To grasp the true scale of this lawsuit, we have to zoom out and contrast those physical batteries with some massive financial realities. Just think about this number for a second. $852 billion. That is the current estimated valuation of OpenAI. We are talking about market implications that stretch across the entire global economy. OpenAI is no longer some scrappy little startup. They are an absolute financial juggernaut. And right alongside that valuation is this number, $180 billion. That's the sheer volume of capital OpenAI has successfully raised from investors. When you have $180 billion of investor money backing you, the pressure to find new, explosive avenues for growth is just absolute. Expanding beyond software like ChatGPT and pushing into physical consumer hardware, analysts view that as a completely vital opportunity for OpenAI to justify these immense sky-high valuations. So what is the real-world fallout going to be? For Apple, the goal is pretty straightforward. They're fighting for an injunction to block the use of any stolen tech, and they want financial damages. But for OpenAI, the risks here are existential. If the court actually grants that injunction, it could completely derail their highly anticipated IPO. And even worse for their product roadmap, an injunction could trigger the total collapse of their new multi-billion-dollar hardware division before it even has the chance to launch a single device. Which brings us to our ultimate takeaway. As AI leaps from software into physical devices, where exactly is the line drawn between aggressive talent acquisition and outright corporate espionage? As these tech giants race to build the hardware of tomorrow, massive talent migrations like this are only going to increase. This lawsuit isn't just about a few stolen circuit boards. It's going to establish the ground rules for the entire next decade of tech innovation. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep that question in mind as this incredible legal drama continues to unfold.